actively working with government institutions and working with the systems. And so we took the data and we co-wrote and are co-producing these policy briefs. And they're really the key audience are the systems change leaders. And so we're working, and Brazil's has been published and Sierra Leone's has been published. So we can share some of the links. Brazil's is being finished translation into Portuguese. We're finishing Colombia. And we're working on South Africa and Kazakhstan and Tanzania, Zanzibar. And so with these countries, we have been really studying and mapping it and coming up with 5 key recommendations for systems change. Your colleagues today are going to share a little bit of some of the context, and we're going to highlight today 4 of the countries. So you'll hear from Bangladesh and Sierra Leone first, and then you'll hear from Colombia and Brazil. And they're going to lean into one of the things that they have found and one of the solutions that they're working on, a creative approach to try to address some of this from a systems framework. And so I won't talk too much. I'm going to give a few slides. We'll go on to the next framing. But really the objective was to work together to co-develop an approach for using family engagement to inform systems change. As you can see, we don't have family engagement on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's not a systems change at the global, but it's getting there. And so how can we also work with country governments to make it part of systems change? And how do we understand how families and how to elevate family voices in policies, plans, and practices? And how do we test out a few strategies for enacting change? So that's really what we were working on. And we're continuing to work on with the teams. And so we took the research, we did policy analysis in each of the countries, and we'll get a snapshot. So for example, we looked at all the different policies in Bangladesh, from the secondary school policies to the education policies to the parent engagement, and we analyzed what is the role of families. We turned this into a policy brief with 5 clear findings and 5 clear recommendations. And now we're moving to the step of enacting, taking one of those recommendations that the teams worked on and thinking of a creative solution. And that's what the teams will be sharing today, what their creative solution is and how do they plan to put that into motion. So you'll hear a 5-minute piece from each of them, and then we'll have time to ask questions and have a dialogue together. But the enacting recommendations, we are still in the design part of these, thinking through how we're going to do all this. And some teams are looking at tools for schools guidance some are looking at more student-led research to inform a particular question. Some are looking at communities of practice across the national in communities of practice for teachers. And so there are different solutions. And then we're working on how do we monitor and document this change and this strategy, and then how do we share learnings from the end of these projects? And so these projects are just starting, these small efforts, and they'll be continuing throughout this year. And so we hope that in 6 to 7 months' time, we'll also be able to share findings on what the teams have found enacting these changes. So without further ado, we're going to move. Oh, and we're going to be also in November 18-19. We moved our symposium from September because it was too busy of a time for schools and for education systems. So we moved it to November, which is Family Engagement Month. And this is also International Education Week, to have this virtual symposium. And so we'll have 6 of the teams sharing their findings, and you'll get a little bit of highlight today. And we'll have interactive workshops as a part of this virtual symposium. So you'll get a lot more information. You'll get a save the date in the next week or so to join this symposium. All right, I'm going to move us into our conversation with Bangladesh and Sierra Leone and how they're creating models for centering students and families in school change. And we have been looking at together of how do we meaningfully elevate family and student voices in decision-making and planning in schools in Bangladesh and Sierra Leone. I'm going to hand now to Mahmoud from Education and Cultural Society of Bangladesh to get us started on the challenge that they've been confronting.
Thank you, Emily. So I am Amun Morshed, and I'm representing ECS, Education and Cultural Society from Bangladesh, and I'm excited to share some insights from our policy brief and our action strategy. So here we found in both Bangladesh and Sierra Leone, we have seen similar challenges when it comes to family engagement in school planning and decision making. The problem statement is very clear. Families are not meaningfully engaged in decision making, uh, in school roles or in creating school visions and plans. The lack of engagement becomes critical when we consider the persistent issues of high student absenteeism and school dropouts at the secondary level. If families and students are not part of the conversation, we miss out on powerful perspectives for developing effective solutions. Next slide, please. So the context of Bangladesh, in Bangladesh, the education system envisions decentralization in decision making through school management committees. And historically, the family engagement in these committees has been very limited. So we found in our research, only 21% of families provide feedback on school decisions, only just 14% take leadership roles in SMCs. So one of the major barriers has been the political influence in SMC leadership. These committees were traditionally chaired by political appointees who had power over school budgets and planning. But the good news is that the policy reforms are underway. Uh, Nowadays, the political appointees can no longer chair the SMCs, and our election commission also had passed a very effective rule that any person who is engaged in school management committee cannot sit for the election, cannot play role in next upcoming election. So educators on SMCs must now have graduate degree. So we will get more educated persons and families can join regardless of their education level. So this open the involvement of families in school management committees. So this is a positive step, but structural change alone is not enough. Families need meaningful spaces and process to truly engage. Next slide. So this is our proposed strategy in Bangladesh. We are going to address these gaps and we are launching an action project that focuses on elevating family and student voices in school planning. The strategy is to pilot rubrics-based activity in selected schools where families, teachers, and students come together to map and analyze current family engagement practices and co-create strategies that make parents and caregivers feel a stronger sense of belonging in the school community. So this is not just a consultation exercise, it's about building collaborative school culture where families move from being passive participants to active partners in decision making. And we believe this approach will strengthen trust, ownership, and shared accountability, ultimately helping us tackle attendance issues and dropout rates. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions during the discussion.
Amazing. Thanks, Mahmoud. I forgot to mention too that Mahmoud wears a couple of hats. He's working in supporting the civil society, Education and Culture Society, but also has a role with the government. And maybe Mahmoud, you can say briefly what your role is.
So I'm working with the Ministry of Education and currently appointed as associate professor in a college in the capital, that is Eden Women College. And here I have found all the female students from all over Bangladesh. They are coming to get higher education from this college. And we also found many problems to discuss with them and to solve with the education ministry. So I am working as the bridge to the ministry and to the students. Thank you.
Really lucky to have Mahmoud's perspective as a bridge with the civil society and with the government institution and teacher professional development and training as well as the students. And with that, I'm going to hand to Alpha, who I will say Alpha is also, we're lucky to have Alpha and such a champion from the government side who was in the Port Loco district leading the whole equivalent of the Port Loco district or in a province or a state if you're thinking about it from another context. So, and Alpha is now is going to be working now at the national level. He has, through all of this work on family engagement as well as working well with civil societies, is now going to be moving to kind of a national level role. But we would love to hear from you, Alpha, what you have been finding and share a little bit the context in Sierra Leone. Handing to you, Alpha. You're on mute, so just unmute. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you can get me. As rightly mentioned, Alpha Bangura is my name. I am from Sierra Leone. Of course, I'm glad to inform this August body that because of the collaboration, because of the effective work we have been doing out there in Portofo, where I was assigned, I have been selected to act in the capacity of director of school quality assurance and monitoring resources. Wherein I'm going to be in charge of all the deputy directors in in my county. In the context in Sierra Leone, of course, in Sierra Leone, education leaders and policies are largely depend. I mean, education leaders and policies largely define family engagement as participation of families in school communities, SMC and BOG. Of course, in our country, we have our parliament that approve the board of governors and SMCs. It's the statutory body that is charged with the responsibility of supervising schools, responsible to handle affairs at school level or at district level. SMC consists of 8 members, including head teacher, parents, caregivers, and even the school quality assurance officers. Whilst the BOG consists of about 13 to 15 or 14 members, it depends on the context, which include the ministry representatives, in addition to the teachers and parents. Of course, leadership in SMCs and BOGs hold power on who participates in school decisions. These and other factors prevent diverse families from contributing. Of course, this membership for the BOG, the school will recommend 4 members, whilst the minister will select one of them to serve as chair. Whilst the SMC for the primary level, there will be 3 representatives from the proprietors, and one will be selected as the chairperson. And these people have immense power to control the finances and whatever of the school. Now, Sierra Leone, of course, is trying to combat high student absenteeism, but families and students need to be part of the solution and work beyond the SMC, because if you can look at the SMC, they have very less say. You know, if you look at the composition, it can only be represented under the CTA, which is the Community Teacher Association, and it's only the chairperson that is being represented. Next slide. Because as a result of this challenge, we have proposed in CIN, this is our proposed strategy in CIN to involve students in a research exercise which with their families to understand mindset around chronic absenteeism and what solution schools and families can try to improve student attendance, because the families are not highly engaged in school activities, and they are almost spending over 18 hours at home. We actually see it very necessary to incorporate this set of people, stakeholders, to promote, regular attendance and to reduce the rate of dropouts in school. So far, this is what I have regarding, in relation to what we have been doing in relation to the research and our proposed action, as a key talking point or key takeaway. In Sierra Leone, of course, we still have problems of where community are not fully engaged because of, the power is centralized just among key stakeholders who are the SMC chairs and representatives of the proprietors. And our solution is, of course, to devise a method initial wherein we are going to collaborate with educate to see how best we can seek for their own, seek their own for their own input to see how best we can be able to reduce these kind of problems in our city.
Amazing. Thank you, Alpha, for that great, and Mahmoud for that. And just quick summary of bring it together, because then we would love to open it up for questions and conversations. You can put your questions in the chat. Rachel will start us off. So again, in Bangladesh and Sierra Leone, they have a family engagement is often defined by the policy as if families are on a decision-making committee, in this context called school management committee. In the US context, you would think of a school board or an advisory council. And with those, they have found that there's often the political appointees that are part of these. So if you can imagine, there's a school management team, but with families, but you have a political appointee, you have the principals and head teachers there. And so you might have 3 or 4 families, but whether or not they feel comfortable sharing, or maybe they're handpicked for their perspectives. So these 2 teams are really looking at how do you open up family voice to be broader, and how do you make it more inclusive to families. In Sierra Leone, they're also and Bangladesh looking at also rural families. How do you look at families that don't have high literacy and education levels and making them be a part of the conversation? So that's the strategies that they're leaning into. Bangladesh is looking at how to use the global family school community engagement rubrics for school planning and having these conversations with schools and bringing families and students into these planning. And Sierra Leone is looking at doing research on student absenteeism, because 1 in 2 children are not finishing school, and they're missing up to 5 to 6 weeks of school at the beginning of the year. So chronic absenteeism is a very pronounced issue. So thank you again to Mahmoud and to Alpha and to Educate and ECS and this government and civil society partnership that you have created as a very important model for all of us of how to really work together to champion this in your districts, in your nation. So thank you. So we're going now to shift from Bangladesh and Sierra Leone and move to Brazil and Colombia. And I think I just saw Adelaida jump in to the call. So I think we have Cristiano joining us from Nova Escola, who's going to talk a little bit about the context of Brazil. And then we have Adelaida, and we have a new colleague too from Red Papa, Juan, who is also on the call. And Adelaida is going to take us through a bit about Colombia, and they've been looking at how do we build communities of practice in schools to help foster greater in family engagement. And so each teams in their policy analysis have found how important communities of practice. And so I'm going to hand now to Cristiano, who's going to take us through what's happening in Brazil.
Perfect. Hi guys, nice to meet you. I'm Cristiano from Nova Escola. I speak from São Paulo. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the context in Brazil and some of the recommendations that we have when we talk about family engagement and our experience here in Nova Escola. So in Brazil, we had several different governments have made important efforts to bring families close to schools. So these efforts show promise, but in practice, they are often not carried out as originally planned. So one key challenge when we talk about family engagement is especially communication. So most of families' engagement strategies are one-way strategies. So schools talk to families, but they do not always listen to families' needs, ideas, or concerns. So this limits the real collaboration between family and schools. Another barrier that we have in Brazil is the lack of resources. So many schools simply do not have enough staffs funding or tools to build strong and close partnerships with families and communities. So this is a big barrier here. And finally, teachers, coordinators, and education leaders, they usually receive very little training in Brazil on how to work with diverse families in effective ways. So without this proper preparation, even motivated educators, they struggle to create these meaningful connections with families in Brazil. So in short, the context is while we have intention to involve families, the real progress requires better communication and more resources to achieve these goals. So to solve this challenge, or at least to improve this problem. But our first recommendation in Brazil is the democratic management strategy. So here is an important principle when we talk about public education. So it is written into national laws and plans of education, and the idea is that families should take part in school decisions, usually through school councils. But even though it appears often in official documents, it is not well explained in practice to the schools. So schools are not given clear guidance on how to make it work or how to include all families on this democratic management. Because of this, only about 1 in 10 families in our study said that they were involved in school decisions. And even fewer families had leadership roles on these councils. So in many cases, participation ends to are limited to a small group of families, while others, especially the most vulnerable ones, are left out of this kind of project. However, we have some inspiration examples in Brazil. For example, in our study, we saw a case in the Amazonas province in the north region of Brazil of a school that created weekly assemblies where students, families, and staffs could meet and solve problems together. In another province in the south of Brazil, Rio Grande, we also have another inspire example of a school that started monthly assemblies as well to talk about issues of the community, such as school safety. And this project was recognized by an international wise of examples of community collaboration. So while the democratic management has a great potential in Brazil to make schools more inclusive and collaborative, it needs more clarity, guidance, practical strategies, and opportunities for all families to participate in a meaningful way. So this is the democratic management recommendation. Our second strategy that I want to share with you guys is our community of practice, which is a space where teachers in Brazil they can connect with each other and support and create this space of support. So these communities are usually created by teachers to involve teachers, school leaders, and also coordinators to talk openly about their challenge, celebrate their success, and share ideas that work in the classroom. A big strength of this community is it's the diverse. So educators from different regions and backgrounds bring their own experience, which helps everyone learns from on another and discover new ways to improve teaching. In Nova Escola, we have a community of practice that helps keep these environments of sharing of good practice between teachers. So we have an online space for discussions for teachers. We organize in-person events in different regions of Brazil, and we also support teachers as teachers projects with fundings. We also, as I said, we also have a platform to connect these teachers and create this space of sharing practice, so we can benefit different teachers from different parts of the country. So this is one of another recommendation, another example of how we create we strengthen the strategy of engaging families and schools in Brazil.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cristiano. And just again to reiterate, Nova Escola is working with so much of the work that they do is working with these community practices of teachers and bringing teachers together around knowledge and sharing and conversations. And so they're really helping us understand too, how do you build family engagement into this conversation with teachers, and this idea of democratic school management that is so clear across all of the different policies, but not always very clearly laid out. How do you actually do that? And so they're helping study and understand, how do you actually do that in practice? And so we're really grateful for that. That's a great connection to our other team in Colombia, Red Papa. So Red Papa and Alianza Educativa have led all of the research with families across 13 departments and 66 schools, private and public. Now they've taken all of this research and helping understand sort of the policy. And they have a very strong policy in Colombia that you'll hear from for family engagement, but how do you actually move that into practice? And that connects a lot to what Cristiano was saying in Brazil. So handing to our colleague Adelaida, who's here, and I think Adelaida and Juan are here from Red Papa.
Hi, good morning to everybody. Good afternoon to those who are on the other side of this global. Thank you, Emily and Risha, for this session. So in the context of Colombia, the first thing I want to get very clear, the point is that we have actually a law that help us work with families. Is the Ministry of Education sent to all the schools. It's mandatory to have family engagement, as we call it in Spanish, Alianza Familia Escuela. So it's mandatory. And also within that family engagement law, we have the way we have to create spaces of participation of parents is La Escuela para Padres, or La Escuela Familia. The family is like the meetings where the teachers have to meet with the parents to talk about some specific topics. Even though the law is very clear, it has all the requirements, it doesn't have a budget, and it doesn't have the human resources to do it. So all the schools are struggling I have to work with families, but I don't know how to. I don't have not the money, and I don't have the resources. Most of the public schools in Colombia, the person in charge of working with families is the social worker or the psychologist, and we have 3,000 students for one social worker. So she or he is enabled to do the work. There are no human resources, there's no budget, there's no space, and we have in the research we did, we see that we have like a big gap of why parents don't participate. They all are struggling in making parents part of the school, even though we have a lot. So the idea of Red Papas is that help accomplish this law, but not like a checklist. Like, okay, I have Escuela de Padres, I have this meeting with parents, I do the checklist because I have to do 3 in the year, but I am not doing the best work I can. I am not engaging those parents. Those families are not being actually part of the school. They are not feeling welcome. So we have to create a way, resources, tools to make these parents, these families engage in the life of their kids and be active part of the school. So it's like a huge, it is a very hard work, but we are doing the best we can. And with the help of Brookings and all of you, we are creating a lot of tools and a lot of ways to make these schools welcome their parents, their families, and start creating a community, a real community that works for the kids. So please, Risha, can you close the next one? So I want to, in a quick way, tell you how Red Papas work. All the schools that are part of Red Papas have a team that is called the school leaders. Normally is the psychologist, a teacher, or the social worker. And we have the family leaders. They create a team with a regional coordinator of Red Papas in each of our regions, in each of our cities. All the schools have this group work, always the principal like in the head of the group. And we have a community of practice, as Cristiano also has a community of practice, where we share all the tools that Red Papas has for the families. But we meet one day at the month, and we create a co-creative space where Red Papas give strategies, tools, ideas to how to solve a problem or to address alcohol consumption, parental behaviors, risks, mental health in the students. So we have a topic, Red Papas give the tools, the strategies, the material, and we create a space where everyone shares their opinion, the way they're doing, and we create like a community where we share our experiences with all the schools. In Red Papas, we have public and private schools sitting together in the same table, making conversations of how to address these problems using all the tools that and all the strategies that Red Papas give it. We have a kit called Kit Papas. This kit gives context to the families and ways to solve their problems and their needs. And we have a conference that are virtual presence conference, and we have an app, and we are very joyful to show you our app. You can find all the resources that has Red Papas. It's called App Red Papas. I think that Juan maybe can write it in the chat, so you can all. It's a free app. It's in Spanish, but you are free to go ahead and see all the strategies and all the tools that Red Papas have for their families and for the families and for the school. All our the app is we have like a part for schools and a part for parents. So if I'm a parent and I need something, I can go to the part of parents. And if I'm a teacher, a coordinator, I go to the part of instituciones educativas, the schools, and I have those elements there. And we work together. We create spaces to make the families active part of the school. So with the 6 global lessons and our policy brief, we have 6 findings, right, Emily? 6 findings, 5 findings. And with these findings, one of the findings is that we need to create, or the necessity is that the schools need a guide, how to do this work with the families, because we have the law here, but the law doesn't say how to do it. It doesn't have a budget. It doesn't have people, human resources, and we need to do the know-how. So we are creating a tool and a guidance to help the public and the private schools and across education levels to do impactful involvement of the families, planning and implementing La Escuela de Padres. So that is not just a checklist, you know, actually the parents go learn something, create something with the school that impacts their families, the work they do at home, and they can do it on the school too. Because as we all know, if there's more it's more family engagement. If I have a higher level of family engagement, I will have a higher level of social-emotional development of our children. So the idea with this tool of guidance of Escuela de Padres is to have a two-way conversations in the community that actually impact the family. And the family feels they are welcome, they are part of the school. And the idea is that we can, the families get support student learning, well-being, and develop and address pressing needs in the communities. Because as the same situation that happens in Brazil and most of our global South countries, our communities are very diverse. Their needs are very different. So the idea is that this guide will adapt to the different necessities, the different problems, and the context that they're living. Because even though I live in a city called Valledupar, the needs of the rural of the public schools are very different, and the needs of the private schools, but in the rural area is very different. In the dispersed rural area is even difficult. So the idea is that this guide is so helpful that we can adapt it to the necessity and the different context. I don't know if one of you want to jump in on and say something else. If I'm missing something.
No, I think that you make a great presentation. Good morning to everyone here from Colombia. I'm Juan Camilo, a knowledge management lead here in Red Papas. I just want to add, and maybe we can share that in another meeting, that now we have evidence that shows that Red Papas, like school involvement in Red Papas, also has some improvement in academic results, improving in public and private schools. So we also now have a strong evidence that shows that we are not only like affecting socio-emotional resources in childs and youngs, but also we are also promoting some impact at the academic level. So we can share that information maybe deeper in another meeting.
Amazing.
We can send we have impact evaluation, Emily, so I can share with you the impact evaluation. It's in Spanish, or maybe I don't know if there's a version in English, because we did it with
we have a version in English, so we can share it in English.
With the Harvard University, so we can share with you our impact evaluation that comes along with this information, and with the idea that we need families to feel welcome. We have to narrow the barriers that we have. And the idea is that we need to create spaces, non-academic spaces, where families can feel that they are part of a community. And even though they are very diverse, they are welcome. And their ideas, the way they have lived, have an impact in the others, and they can create spaces where they can come together and, well, work for their kids.
Okay, so a lot to digest, but just the power of bringing communities of practice together. So in Brazil, really doing the work with teachers. How do you bring teachers together? They have the pedagogical coordinators that are often the default liaison with all the families, but how do you bring that to be more intentional? How do they learn from each other? In Colombia, you have this policy of mandated family engagement, but how do you get it into practice and getting all families to feel welcome and included through communities of practices with families and with schools? I'll also say the learning across has been really helpful. We were doing a conversation meeting, Adelaida, Cristiano, and I. Cristiano asked a question about Colombia has one of the highest, or the highest, I think, globally, influx of Venezuelan refugees and displaced persons. And so how does that, so he asked the good question of like, how does that, their experience in school, and it was a conversation of whether that's also to think about how to think about that in some of this guidance that Red Papa is creating, and trauma informed, with knowing that you're working with families that are also coming from so many different, not just diverse contexts within Colombia, but also coming from different communities from outside of Colombia. So these are important things for our community to practice to keep thinking about. Let's give a round of applause, a virtual round of applause to our colleagues from Colombia and Brazil, to Cristiano, Nadalaida, and Juan, and Fatima, and Laura, for all of their work on this systems change research.